its passage in the Senate and House of Representatives in December last year as the government continues its reforms to ease of doing business in Nigeria. The Business Facilitation Act 2023 is also known as the Omnibus Act, pushed to remove bottlenecks around the process of doing business in Nigeria. The Act also led to the amendment of 21 business-related laws. The Act is expected to favor micro, small and medium-sized enterprise in Nigeria as it creates an enabling environment. So this morning we're taking a look at the Business Facilitation Law. My guest is already here. We'll take a break now. When we'll come back, we'll hit the ground running. Please stay with us. Welcome back. This morning we're taking a look at the new facilitation law signed by President Muhammadu Buhari, and my guest to do justice to it is already in the studio. I have in the studio Mr. Bankole Olalowa, an economist and also a legal practitioner. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Just earlier this morning we had that news, sharing one for that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is now the president-elect of Nigeria. How did you receive that news?
I received that with joy, and I say congratulations to all Nigerians. I also congratulate all the candidates that contested for the presidential election in Nigeria. We're a country of almost over 200 million people, and if we just have 20 people stepping out to be our president, I think even everybody that participates in the election as a presidential candidate, I think they deserve our congratulations. So the victory is not just for the president-elect alone, so it's for all Nigeria, considering the atmosphere that we were in when we went into the election, and having conducted the election and a president-elect has been declared. So I congratulate Nigeria, I congratulate the president-elect. I also congratulate his compatriots who contested with him. So you know there is joy in the participation. So everybody, all Nigerians, we congratulate them, and I think and I hope that the president-elect will hit the ground running, having have background in private sector and public sector. So I'm sure that he will be able to harness all those previous experience to lead Nigeria to the greater height that we all yearn for.
I know quite well that the markets are also reacting to the announcement of INEC earlier this morning. But before that, let's take a look at this issue. The three of them, the front runners, also had 12 states each. They won 12 states each. How does that all sound? Okay,
well, it's good. I mean that the presidential election was hotly contested and highly competitive. That's one issue there. But then, because of the provision of our constitution, has actually provided enough direction on how the presidential candidates were matched. The constitution did not actually say that the presidential candidate must win outright victory in a given number of states. So what is required, 25% in 24 states, including Abuja. And so that is what the requirement of law is. So the fact that all of them won 12 seats is good, and that can only show that the election was hotly contested. And I'm very sure that the person that has emerged now will know that the power of the people is very, very strong. So I think it's a welcome development. It means that our democracy is growing. Of course, there's no perfection anywhere in the world. We may have itches here and there, but at least democracy is not a destination. It's a journey that will continue to move with. And at the end of the day, at least with time, over time, I believe that we will have a election that is not perfect, because there is nowhere in the world where we will have a perfect election. But all said that done, I think the election we had over the weekend is one of the best elections in recent time.
So what has been the reaction of markets of this development?
Yes, even as the world waited with bated breath on the announcement, the price of the Nigeria stock actually increased yesterday, even before the announcement. Although, as at that time, the president-elect has already been projected to win the election, and so the Nigeria stock actually rise. And I believe in the day ahead, if we are able to manage this victory successfully, we'll continue to have a positive sign. And the reason is very, very simple. You know that days or weeks or even months ahead of the election, there were palpable fear here and there. In fact, at the point there was doubt as to whether the election will be postponed. And so now that the election has come and gone and a winner has emerged, I believe that it's going to have a salutary effect in our economic fundamentals.
Could that reaction have been because Asiwaju Bola Ahmed actually won that election?
It's part of it, not necessarily about the president-elect. The fact that people can see that to some extent that the election was highly competitive. Because don't forget it, almost 78 after the election, 78 hours after the ballot closed, nobody can even beat his chest that this is the person that will emerge. So that's also a positive sign. That's a sign that the democracy we have is growing, even though not perfect. So the fact that 78 hours after the ballot, close of ballot, nobody can beat his chest and say this is the person that will emerge as a candidate. So those are positive signs that democracy is growing. So it's a welcome development, and I believe that we'll see improvement our economic fundamental in the day ahead.
Let's come to the topic of today. That's business facilitation law. To ordinary person actually watching this program, what does that mean? Okay,
thank you very much. You know that law, as we know, is an instrument of social engineering. It's an instrument that you continue to use to grow both your political and economy. For instance, you know, Nigerians are conversant about the Electoral Act. That's more or less like a law that is related to political development. So what we are talking about now, the Business Facilitation Act 2023, is also a law that have overview about our business activity. So we cannot just, it should not just be about politics. As a matter of fact, now we have our election now. We'll wait another 4 years before we'll be talking about another election. But business is everyday affair because people have got to survive. And so what we have now is that we have about 21 laws that have bearing on business, growing of business, starting business and growing business in Nigeria, about 21 laws. And so what this new Business Facilitation Act 2023 has come to do is to look at those laws, look at the mischief or the gaps that are in the existing law, with a view to block the loophole. For instance, when the current administration came to power about 7 years ago, you know, there are a lot of reforms were brought on the table. For instance, we have the issue of ease of doing business, which government look at is a reform to see that how can we make Nigeria to be more attractive among the committee of nations. The reason is simple. You know that globally there is a competition over allocation of global resources. For instance, it's not just only in Nigeria that investors can come to do business. So they have opportunity, they have freedom to go to any other country in the world. And so we have a duty to make our country to be competitive so that we can attract funds to our country. And so that is what all those reforms that we're talking about to look at. I also remember that in 2017 we have Executive Order 001, which dealt with the issue of transparency and efficiency in government business. So some of these reforms are now what has now been codified into Business Facilitation Act 2023. You know, it was signed on February 13th by the president. And so it has several highlights. And if you permit me,
please let's go ahead
about those highlights. The first one is known as service level agreement. Service level agreement, meaning that all the MDs, that is Ministry, Department of Government, they must prepare an agreement as to the product they are offering the public, as to the type of service they are offering the public, and as to the time for them to do that. So in that case, if you are a contractor, you want to work with do business with government, so we already have idea about what those MDA, what they are offering, what the requirement is, and all of this is to also ensure that we have transparency. So the first one is that service level agreement. So if you want to do business with any federal MDA now, all you need is to get that service level agreement. It's already encapsulates what it requires for anybody to do business with them. So that will also cut corner. That will cut people from cutting corner, because whatever you need to do.
That also cut these duplications that also have in the MDAs.
Yes, that will also stop that. Then the second one is the issue of transparency and efficiency, which was derived from Executive Order 001 of 2017. So government want to run, government business should not be opaque. Everybody should be aware about how, if you want to take contract from the government, you know what the requirements are, and you should be able to have a fair competition when we are bidding for government contracts. So that's what the issue of transparency and efficiency in government business is concerned. Then another highlight has to do with the issue of automation of the Corporate Affairs Commission business. For instance, we know in Nigeria, the Corporate Affairs Commission is the government agency that is in charge of registering of companies, business name, and incorporated trustee. That is all those NGOs. So that is the business of Corporate Affairs Commission. So the new law now has now provided that if you initiate the idea of maybe registering your business or business name or incorporated trustee, that must happen within 14 days. It's now a matter of law. It's no longer at the discretion of the Corporate Affairs Commission. So that is also one of the highlights of the new law. Then, like we said earlier on, the new law also make amendment to several business bearing laws, such as Immigration Act. For instance, the new law now has now said that if any professional, so you are an alien, you are coming from abroad, you want to come and work in Nigeria as a professional, you need the permit of the Controller General of Custom. Hitherto, that approval is under the Minister of Interior. So now that has now been taken to the Controller General of Immigration. If you are a professional, maybe you are a doctor, you want to come and work in Nigeria, you cannot just throw into the country and start working. You have to get permit from the Controller General of Immigration. So, but hitherto, that is under the Minister of Interior. However, what is the Minister of Interior will now busy himself with the issue of policy, but the issue of giving that permit now rests with the.
So, how beneficial would that be to that investor? The investor coming to Nigeria to also do business.
You mean the entire law?
You know that particular law, that is immigration law.
Okay, the amendment to Immigration Act, which has now been encapsulated in that law, is saying that if you want to come to Nigeria for a permit, hitherto, under the Company and Allied Matter Act, you now get that approval from the Minister of Interior. But now it is now domesticated with the Controller General of you know, it will now ensure efficiency. I understand the question. Meaning that for the minister to be, it will take more time for that approval to come from the minister. Now that we now have the agency that is in charge of our border, when people are coming, the first entry point is the immigration. So now that you have now given that power to the Controller General of Immigration, it will now quicken the process of giving that permit, because it is possible for a professional wanting to come to work in Nigeria to apply for this permit. The minister, have a bigger portfolios than the Controller General of Immigration. So it will now quicken the pace. So this is part of removing the bureaucratic bottleneck. Because even if that permit is sought, the immigration will also have one or two things to do before the minister will now give the approval. Now that it now rests with the Controller General of Immigration, so it will quicken the process of getting such waiver. Now, also talking about the amendment to some other existing laws, such as the Company and Allied Matter Act. Under the Company and Allied Matter Act, for a company to be declared as insolvent, that is unable to pay its debts, it means that it must be owing an amount over more than 200,000, and a demand has been made within 3 weeks, and such a company is not able to pay. So that company will be the issue of insolvency will now come to play. Now, under the new law, that threshold of over 200,000 has been removed. Now it has now been the power now has been given to Corporate Affairs Commission to do it as a form of regulation, and the reason is simple. Over the year we may have reason for a change in that threshold of something more than 200,000. So it then implies, if you don't remove it, then implies that you have to go back to the National Assembly to amend that law. Now that power has now been given to the registrar of Corporate Affairs Commission, who from time to time can now decide that okay, this 200,000 threshold is no longer reasonable or applicable. So that he will now do that without necessarily have to go to National Assembly for amendment. Because before now, what is contained in the Company and Allied Matter is that something over 200,000 naira. And so if the threshold needs to change, you have to move to National Assembly to actually amend that provision, and that is why it is now made something as a regulation, which the Corporate Affairs Commission will now do from time to time. The new law also make amendment to Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission Act. The Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission is federal government agency that is doing all it can do to attract foreign investors into Nigeria. And so in order to also simplify the process, some of those provisions of that Nigeria Investment Promotion Act has also been amended under the new law. So essentially, that is the law is just to make sure that Nigeria is competitive. Okay. And if we are not competitive as a country, you cannot attract funds, you cannot attract investors. Investors want to come to an environment that is highly competitive. And so if your own is not competitive, they would rather go to another country that is competitive. So that is what the law has envisaged. And I must add, intention is not enough in this matter.
So we'll come to the implementation. Okay. But let's take a look at the issue of ease of doing business. This law alone might not be enough for us to actually bring investors to Nigeria to take part in the economic development of Nigeria. The infrastructure of a thing is actually missing from this law, and I know for a fact that infrastructural development, quality one at that, is also important when it comes to ease of doing business. What will be your reaction to that?
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, like I said, the when you should just attract the investor to the country, it's not something that you can command. You know, we have seen instances in the past that sometimes our president will travel abroad. They say they want to attract investor, they want to bring investor. No, you don't need to do that. Make the environment to be functional, create an enabling environment. Once that is done, investors on their own, they will run to your country. And so what you have said is very, very fundamental. But you know, to ensure that our economy is highly competitive, it involves a lot of issues. There is no one single bullet that will just shot and everything will fall in place. So what the law has done is also a way to also ensure that, not minding the fact that we also need to work on our infrastructural deficit. There is a deficit gap in our infrastructural gap in Nigeria. But what I'm saying in essence is that even though this law that we're talking about may not directly talk about the issue of infrastructure, however, if the investors started coming to the country 1, 2, or in trickle, obviously they will be paying tax. They will be making money in Nigeria. They will have people they employ. They will be paying tax to the government, and along the line, government can also get money to start fixing our infrastructure. The truth is that we cannot fix our infrastructure in one day. Even if you have the infrastructure and the laws are not clear, investors want clarity. Investors, they are not the type of people that want to grope in the dark, especially when it involves huge capital outlay. So if you have a law that there are gaps, that certain issues are not very clear, so the investor, they want certainty as far as the law is concerned. And so if it will not cost us so much to now put this law in place, just like we have to spend in infrastructure. So I think it makes sense to ensure that at least we have those law in terms of legal framework that can also attract the investor into our economy. Don't also forget the fact that even the road, the electricity, all of those infrastructure we are talking about, we can also attract the private investor to come and invest in them. For instance, if an investor is coming, we can give a road that, okay, we want a private investor to help us to maintain this road. Those investors, they need a legal framework that can guarantee the return on their investment. So having that law in place, I believe, is a step to
exactly.
better something. Because those people, all of those deficits that we have, we can give it to private sectors. The investor can come abroad to invest in them. But for them to come, they need to be clear about what our laws are.
Exactly, so because that's also my fear, because it's also not embedded in this law. And anybody who's also coming to do business in Nigeria might also want to take it for granted. Because government has also said that there's no point, it is not the duty of government to be in business. All they need to do is to create an enabling environment. And the investors have also insisted that the enabling environment government can create is to ensure that we have sound infrastructure.
No, okay, like you know, I don't get it. But the truth is that the part of enabling environment that we are talking about is law. The legal framework that protects investors is part of enabling environment, is part of infrastructure that is required. For instance, if government did not have enough money to do certain roads, don't forget that you can do PPP, public-private partnership. And so those people that are bringing their money, they need to be sure that they will get their money back in terms of what they return. You know, if you look at our electricity tariff, I've talked about this severally, there must be cost recovery tariff. If you now say that people should come and invest in our electricity, there must be the tariff that will be given that will be approved by the government must be one that they can recover their costs. So having this law, as far as I'm concerned, is also a step forward. You know, government does not have to even invest its own money, especially when they're announcing the resources are very, very minimal. So we can, if we have good law, good legal framework that will guarantee investor returns. So it's part of the enabling environment. For instance, if the laws are not so clear, if an investor does not know how he can repatriate whatever profit he made in the country, so you know he will not be happy to come to invest in our economy. Now, don't forget this new law that we are talking about, which has now codified Executive Order 001 of 2017, which deal with transparency and efficiency. So it's very, very key to anybody bringing his money. You don't want to bring your money to an economy where everything is treated in secrecy. So it's also part of it. So I believe that having this law as at now is something that is sharing, and I'm very sure that, yes, those people that want to come and do one thing in Nigeria, they will expect to have electricity, they will expect to have good road and that. But if the situation we are in now is that we cannot do it, we cannot fix it on our own, those people that we want to bring to come and fix it with us, they must have legal framework that protects their investment.
Also, let's take a look at this issue of transparency and efficiency, because I know that in times of also bidding for contracts in government circle, it's also always be an Herculean tax. Now with this, are you also convinced that that it be easy for investors, anybody who wants to do business with government, to get a contract easily?
Well, I feel it. I felt so because the law has now provided that every MD now, federal MD now, because the law probably would now be as far as the federal, yes, except the state now decided to have their own law. It's an act of parliament. So essentially, the target probably federal MD. So the law has also provided that every MD will pay some of these things on their website. And if there are infractions, if you bid for a contract and probably you fail with your change, you now have a medium of reporting back. So I believe that
exactly, because I was also trying, but that's also the fear.
Yes, that, so that if you know that you don't have a fair bargain with such MDA product or services, then you can there's a medium whereby you can report that particular MD. And like I said, one of the things is that we have what is known as service level agreement, whereby MD will now tell the whole world, this is our product, this is what we are selling, this is the service we are bringing to the table for everybody to know. So this is the number of days that you can do this thing. For instance, I talk about the Corporate Affairs Commission, the law has now said that its activities has now been automated. If you want to register a company or a business name or incorporated trustee, if you start it today, it has to be done within 14 days. So if they don't do it within that 14 days, as a elected citizen, you have a right to take them to the court because that's a breach of the provision of the new Business Facilitation Act. And like the name implies, it's a business facilitation. It is to ensure that we help our citizens to start a business and to also grow the business. For instance, if you want to register a business name and it's taking you ages to have that done, the law has now made it clear that this Corporate Affairs Commission activity, as far as that is concerned, is now automated, and that has to be done within 14 days. And even the contact with human element that naturally delay has also been removed by the automation of the system. So by and large, if the law is well implemented, I foresee that it will help us to go to business.
The implementation is also an issue, but before we go into implementation, let's take a look at anybody who wants to do business with CAC and is supposed to get it within 14 days, and that person didn't get it within that 14 days. What's going to happen? Of
course, the person, there's a remedy. Of course, I know that you may not immediately head to court. There is a complaint platform where you can lodge your complaint, and appropriate officer will do the needful. And if after raising your complaint nothing is done, as a citizen you also have a right to go to court. But you know our problem in this country, we don't test our law. People will just accept it even when there are infractions on such law. I believe that if the law now has provided that this thing should be done within 14 days, if it doesn't happen, and you just have there's a platform along their website where you can lay your complaint and you will be attended to. And if that is not done, then I think a citizen can have a recourse to court to ensure that the provision of law is not just breached flagrantly.
I also know that your concern is the issue of implementation. So how do we ensure that we have these laws implemented?
Okay, thank you very much. The best way to ensure this law is implemented is that we need to have a country whereby there is accountability. You know, when people talk about accountability these days, we know our mind just go to issue of money. You know, being accountable is not just about money alone. Now, all of these government institutions, people have been employed to work there. They have been employed to provide certain services. So it is now time for us to ensure that whoever has been given a mandate, it doesn't have to be governor or president or senator alone. If you are a technocrat, you have been employed in government services, there is a mandate that has been given to you. There are certain services that you are supposed to provide. So I believe that we need to ensure that people are doing what they are supposed to do. And where they are not doing, of course, there should be sanction.
So before I let you go on the program, because the time is not on our side, we have a new president-elect. What should we expect from this president-elect economically?
Well, like I said earlier on, I think he has his job cut out for him. He's a chartered accountant and he has a vast experience in private sector and also in government sector. And so I think he should be able to align to the benefit of Nigeria. And don't also forget the fact that the president-elect also have knack for, sporting talent. He has demonstrated that in Lagos over times. And I believe that he should be able to put his team in place as soon as he is inaugurated.
So if you have to advise him now, what should be his first approach to ensure that we change the economy? Okay,
the first thing I will encourage the president-elect to do, if I have the opportunity, is number one, he must allow all Nigeria, must work so that all Nigeria rally around him. including those that vote for him, including those that did not vote for him. Because as at now, is the president-elect of Nigeria, not of a particular
I'm
party.
talking about economic wise now.
Okay, well, it has to. The issue of our infrastructure is very, very key. For instance, this issue of electricity, we have been dancing around cycle over it. And like I said, if we are able to fix this power, energy, if we are able to fix energy in Nigeria, I can assure you that our GDP can grow by almost 50% in a year. And that can happen consistently for about 10 years. If we are able to ensure that we fix our power or energy deficit, I think Mr. President-elect should be able to focus on the issue of energy so that Nigeria can do their business. For instance, we have so many artisans, people that are doing small business, they need energy. And those energy are not just easy to come by. So I hope that he will be able to fix that.
The last 25 minutes or thereabout, I've been speaking with Mr. Bankole Olalowo, an economist and also a legal practitioner. Together, we're taking a look at business facilitation law in Nigeria, and also we also talked about the president-elect. I want to thank you so much for sharing your thought with us on the show today. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
That's how it's going to be on the show today. Join us on Friday for another one. Kunle Areyo is my name. Good morning.